He poured his heart into everything, his love, his labor, and the quiet strength no one saw. After the boy's mother disappeared without warning, he became both parents, shaping his son's world alone. He taught him resilience, dignity, and how to walk with pride even when the world looked down on men like him. But on the day his son got married, the message printed in gold on the place card said more than 1,000 insults ever could: undereducated, pretend father. The elegant laughter from the bride's side of the aisle, full of lawyers, scholars, and political elites, cut deeper than any blade. His son didn't say a word in his defense. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and turned his back. What they didn't realize was that this quiet man carried more power than he ever let on. While his son was scrambling up the ranks of society, he was quietly laying the foundation of something far bigger. And when betrayal came knocking, his response wasn't loud or furious. It was silent. One phone call, one carefully timed revelation. An empire collapsed overnight. Now, the son who once discarded his past stands on the threshold of the only home that ever loved him, begging to be let back in. But some truths cut too deep to forget. Some lessons come not with fire, but with a warm meal and a door left slightly open. The light from the chandelier reflected off the embossed gold card, taunting me with every glint. Undereducated. Pretend father. Not a name, not a title, just a cruel joke printed clearly on the card placed at my seat. The father of the groom's table. Before I could even sit down, the laughter had already started. The bride's family, polished and proud in their tailored outfits and polished accents, snickered behind their glasses of champagne. One man, older with silver hair and a Rolex thicker than my wrist, leaned toward his wife and said just loud enough, "I guess anyone can raise a kid these days." My hands trembled, not from embarrassment, but from fury, the sheer nerve of it all. Because I remembered. I remembered holding my son when he was just 3, left behind by a woman who vanished without a note, a goodbye, or even a proper bottle of milk. I remembered those nights spent poring over construction site plans, my hands raw from steel and stone, only to clock into my second job scrubbing school hallways. The sharp scent of bleach was my perfume. Our dinners were often cold rice eaten on a mattress too thin to hide the springs. My son curled up next to me for warmth. I never made it past grade 10, but I taught him things no textbook ever could. How to look someone in the eye without flinching. How to work until a job was done right. How to wear second-hand clothes with his chin held level. Not high, not low, just steady. When he graduated top of his class, I clapped from the last row of the auditorium, my scuffed work boots tucked under the chair so no one would see. I didn't fit in with the crowd in front, their polished shoes and soft hands, but my pride thundered louder than any applause in that room. Then things began to change. Gradually, Dad became Pops, then just, "Hey." He stopped explaining what he did for a living, brushing me off with a vague, "You wouldn't understand." I smiled through every brush off, told myself it was part of growing up, but the shift was undeniable the day I surprised him with lunch at his office. His favorite stir-fry, still warm in a container. The receptionist stared at me like I'd walked in from another planet. "You're not on the approved visitor list." Through the clear glass of the meeting room, I saw her, the bride, impeccably dressed, a sleek ponytail, diamond studs catching the light. She whispered something into his ear, then laughed, a sharp, dismissive laugh that pierced through the glass. My son looked at me and turned his back. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't part of his new life. I was baggage, something he'd long since outgrown. I should have walked out of the wedding, but I stayed, silent, watching him toast his in-laws with a voice as polished as the bubbles in his glass. When I finally walked away, it wasn't out of anger, it was out of clarity, because while he was climbing ladders I couldn't see, I had been building something else. Years before, while he was in college, I worked graveyard shifts installing server rooms. I listened more than I spoke. Befriended a cybersecurity startup, founder no one believed in. When banks refused him a loan, I stepped in. A simple handshake gave me 38% of his company. Just a favor. Nothing formal. The irony? My son's company, the one he built with his wife's family, ended up hiring our firm for a major government contract. I didn't have to interfere. The damage was already baked in. The numbers were inflated, metrics forged, corners cut, most of them at the bride's direction. When the audit hit, it was like a thunderclap. Leaked memos, whistleblowers, federal investigations. I sat quietly in the gallery while her father, once too proud to look me in the eye, sweated through a Senate hearing. Lie after lie unraveled in front of cameras. The company's stock nosedived. Investors ran. And then came the final blow. Public termination of the contract, citing ethical violations. The headline screamed louder than any toast ever could. Tech darling collapses overnight. 3 weeks later, he knocked on my door. Not at the high-rise I bought him. Not at the luxury apartment he shared with her. At my house. The one with peeling paint and uneven steps, where the smell of rice and soy sauce lingered in the air. He looked hollow. No watch, no suit. Just that same lost expression he wore at 3 years old when nightmares woke him up crying. I didn't know about the card, he murmured. I looked him dead in the eyes. But you let them laugh. He gave a small nod. No defense. No justification. I stepped aside. Not because I forgave him, but because silence teaches best. And some lessons need to be felt, not spoken. Now he sits at my table, eating from old, chip plates, unemployed, humbled, learning the weight of words he once tossed aside. And me, I still work, not out of necessity, but because there's something honest about having dirt under your nails. In the end, the man they called a fake was the only real one in his life all along.